And as is now tradition here on News and Views in the afternoon, on Tuesdays, we have the one, the only Judge Andrew Napolitano on the live stream here. Hey, Judge, how you doing today?
Oh, great, Joey. Great to be on with you as always, my friend.
Now, I thought we should begin here domestically with Trump's legal woes. In particular, I mean, I guess we saw that $5,000 fine for violating one gag order, but recently, Sidney Powell and I believe Jenna Ellis just flipped in this Georgia case. They pleaded guilty. When you look at the latest in Trump lawfare world, what are we seeing here?
Well, I mean, it's becoming a river, and it started out as a trickle. I mean, first Sidney Powell, and then Ken Chesebro, and then Jenna Ellis. Now, Sidney Powell, as I understand it, was present at one crucial meeting. She has a tremendous amount of baggage. I can't imagine the government putting her on the witness stand. Trump's lawyers would have a field day cross-examining her. But Kenny Chesebro is a very serious, highly regarded lawyer who was present at all of the critical meetings and who pleaded guilty not to a low-level misdemeanor like Sidney Powell, but to a very serious felony of orchestrating the scheme by which 16 electors were to claim, Republicans were to claim that they were the true electors from Georgia, even though they knew that Joe Biden had carried the popular vote in the state. Jenna Ellis, she was on Fox a lot. We all knew her. I don't know anything about her legal skills or reputation, but Trump was crazy about her and very close to her. Look, this is the mafia model that the government is applying. You indict the foot soldiers and expect them to turn on the Godfather, and that is what is happening one after another thus far. So far, 4 people have flipped. One, the bail bondsman, and the other 3 lawyers. One of the lawyers, as I said, on the periphery, but the other 2 right there at all of the critical meetings. This has got to be very, very bad news for the president. Let me tell you how this works. Before you enter into these guilty pleas, you do what's called, it's an odd phrase, and I don't know the origin of it, queen for a day. Okay. The defendant comes in with his or her lawyer. They sit in a room with the prosecutor and 2 or 3 investigators. The people on the government side agree. The queen, the defendant, can say whatever he wants and it can't be used against him. But if it's stuff that they're interested in, they're going to take it into account when they negotiate the plea bargain. So that means that the bail bondsman, name escaping me, Sidney Powell, Ken Chesebro, and Jenna Ellis spent hours and hours in this queen for a day debriefing session recorded on a tape recorder, telling the government what they would tell a jury in return for a negotiated guilty plea. Whatever it is, the government wants it. And whatever the government of Georgia has, it will share with the feds. So expect that these 3 will be debriefed by FBI agents who will then recommend to Jack Smith whether or not they should testify in the D.C. federal case. The Florida federal case is just about the documents and Trump's alleged inability to keep secret materials to himself. But the D.C. federal case mirrors the Georgia case. It pertains to the same events.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and it's heating up as you're starting to see early polls come out with Trump and Biden, with also RFK Jr. and Cornel West in there. What a mess we're heading into politically. And real quick, you mentioned Sidney Powell's baggage. I always found myself going, well, I kind of like what Sidney Powell, because I didn't know a lot about her, what she did with Michael Flynn, with General Flynn. And then when I saw her talking about this so-called Kraken, which Trump now claims he never believed, it was one of those things where I'm like, Sidney, if what you're saying is actually true, you probably shouldn't say it in public, that people are literally selling these votes behind the scenes to the highest bidder. But what happened to her? She seemed like, maybe I should have been wise to this earlier. She seemed like a pretty professional, competent lawyer. and it tried a lot of cases. How the heck did this occur?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, and I share your view. I never knew her personally, but I knew her by reputation as a not only competent but tenacious lawyer who enjoyed representing the underdog. But look, there's two ways that witnesses can help the government. One exposes them to cross-examination, and one doesn't. So when the witness, also a defendant in the case, has pleaded guilty and has now become a witness for the government, when that witness has a lot of baggage, they don't want to put that witness on the stand, but that witness can help the government by pointing the government in the right directions. Well, listen, I'm a lawyer. I know why you can't use me, but so-and-so knows about this, and so-and-so knows about this. And Trump whispered this in my ear that you should know about. So she can provide both governments, the state of Georgia and the feds, with guidance in both cases without either of them putting her on the witness stand. But if they do put her on the witness stand, some of the stuff she said was just crazy, just off the wall. They would be unwise to put her on unless they just want some moments of levity.
Right.
At their own expense.
Now, also just historically, if it comes to mind, what's the biggest RICO case in our history? I know there are some high-profile names maybe come to mind, but in your mind, what's the biggest RICO case?
I can't tell you by name, but the person who used RICO more aggressively than anybody else and popularized its use for other prosecutors is now a defendant in this case. And that's Rudy Giuliani.
Right.
When he was the United States attorney for the Southern District of New York. RICO, we've been through this before, I think, which stands for Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, also was chosen because the name RICO is an Italian nickname.
Oh, right.
Italian. So RICO was crafted in order to put the mob out of business. How to put the mob out of business? Okay, so-and-so is a mobster. We caught him ordering the extortion. He's gone away for 10 years. But that crime family still has $15-20 million with which to do whatever they want. So RICO came up with treble damages. So if the mob family extorted a legitimate businessman for $1 million a year, and a jury found them guilty of that extortion and the right statutes were triggered, like RICO, then the jury could extract 3 times what they extorted from the mob. 1 million from the businessman. 1 million would go back to the extortion victim, and the government would make the other 2. So RICO was written in order to put the mob out of business. And quite frankly, whatever you think of Rudy, he did almost single-handedly put the mob out of business in New York in large measure by using RICO. The other advantage to RICO is it's a civil as well as a criminal statute. On the civil side, you can extract these funds from your adversary without proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. RICO also bigfoots the statutes of limitations, which are either 5 or 7 years. RICO, it's 10 years. So it really is one of those things that was crafted to make it easier for the government to go after organized crime. Was Donald Trump the head of an organized criminal outfit? This charge in Georgia says yes.
Well, and we shall see.
The feds did not indict anybody else with him in the D.C. case. Because they're expecting to get their witnesses from their friends in Georgia.
Again, folks, we're talking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. You can always check out his podcast, Judging Freedom. I tend to watch on YouTube, but wherever podcasts are available. And recently on Judging Freedom, I mean, it's gone beyond Ukraine coverage to now what's happening there in Israel. And from the experts you're talking to, and there are many, are we walking into, let's say, the third world wars? I like that term because it could be a bunch of disparate regional wars that all of a sudden meld together like we saw already in the 20th century. But from the folks you're talking to, what are we doing here internationally?
We are trying to get Joe Biden reelected as a wartime president. I mean, he just is willing to fight these wars, and the United States right now is a sitting duck there. We have a $3 billion aircraft carrier sitting off the coast of Gaza with 2,000 Marines on it. That thing could be sunk in a heartbeat. We have another aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. Each of these aircraft carriers is surrounded by a bunch of other smaller ships. Has the Congress authorized the deployment of American troops to aid Israel? Absolutely not. Has it authorized the deployment of troops to aid Ukraine? Absolutely not. Has it authorized money to aid Israel? It hasn't. It's authorized $113 billion for Ukraine. But old Joe is sending boys there as well. What will the American public reaction be when those boys come home in coffins?
Right. And it really is unnerving. And then
Did you know that special forces are on the ground in Gaza right now?
I suspected it. I heard Colonel McGregor confirm that on Tucker last night.
Yes. Yes. Did Congress authorize this? No. Can the president send troops wherever he wants? Absolutely not. Read the Constitution. Congress decides who to attack. The president decides how to attack. That's the basic rule of thumb, according to James Madison.
Well, and Israel being in a deep, deep situation here with it could be multi-fronts just in their behalf. But I really worry when I start seeing folks like Lindsey Graham over there in the Holy Land saying we're going to take Iran out of the oil business. I don't think it stops there with blowing up refineries.
Fortunately, nobody in D.C. takes Lindsey Graham very seriously, particularly when he attacks one of my colleagues for asking a perfectly legitimate question. I don't know what's become of him. He was once a rational senator and a rational lawyer and a judge in the military. But right now he's the prince of the neocons. He told Joe Biden to bomb Tehran, which is basically like saying, let's start World War III.
Well, and it's almost like Lindsey became more hawkish once Senator McCain passed. And it's weird. I've started to more and more, I've been on a big Shakespeare kick lately, that as much as the policy and the ideals and the arguments we can have, a lot of times this comes down to people's weird personalities and idiosyncrasies, right?
Sometimes justice is determined by the personality of the judges, and sometimes wars are fought by the needs of the politicians.
Right.
I mean, why does Joe Biden love war? Why is he bringing us ever closer to two wars, neither of which we can afford to fight? Because he believes that by running as a wartime president like his hero FDR did in 1940, even though we weren't officially in the war yet, in 44, he will get reelected. And all of his many domestic deficiencies will be overlooked by the public.
Yeah, and there's one Biden line right after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He's talking to George Stephanopoulos, and he says something to the effect of, after being pressed by little Georgie, that, hey, the chaos is priced into the decisions we're making. And it seems to be the mantra of his presidency right now.
What can I say? He does say odd things. We all have slips of the tongue, but he has an enormous power. It's hard for me to believe that a person as mentally challenged as he appears to be is able to exercise that power, and one often wonders, well, who's exercising it in his behalf? Who sent the 3,000 Marines there? Who sent the special forces to be on the ground in Gaza? I mean, we're helping special forces kill the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are no threat to us. We're helping the Ukrainians kill Russian military. The Russian military is no threat to us.
And when you have
somebody saying this,
well, and I think it looks like it's Tony Blinken, or maybe it's Jake Sullivan. I think it's Blinken making most of these decisions, especially the way he's talking these last few weeks.
Well, it's dangerous because he hasn't been elected president, though the guy who has been elected president apparently believes whoever he spoke to last.
Well, we've got two of those like that in a row now. Heck.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I always appreciate your time, Judge. What's coming up today, maybe this week, on Judging Freedom?
Well, Colonel McGregor and Scott Ritter will be with me tomorrow and Thursday. I have Matt Ho and Karen Kwiatkowski, two relatively young, recently retired from the military regulars of mine. How does propaganda expand the war, and what chance do the Israelis have in an urban war? I mean, I was looking at the front page of the New York Times on Saturday. I texted some of my friends. I could have texted you. Here are 4 young reservists training for urban warfare, Israelis, in uniform, going through a training exercise. 2 weeks ago, they were school teachers and accountants. 2 weeks from now, they'll be dead.
And some of the most powerful war poetry out there, folks, I've been reading more of it given the times, is the reflections on when everything was normal. So I would just say to the audience, say to anybody out there listening, cherish the normal, even if it might seem ho-hum, because a lot of folks look back when these sorts of things get started, and they long for just a boring, quiet day. And I worry we're heading into very rough waters here.
We are. And McGregor also claims that there are thousands of Hamas agents in the United States already waiting for some sort of a signal to do God only knows what.
Well, Judge, we got to stop meeting in these circumstances. I guess we don't have any control over it. But
No, well, let me cross-examine Sidney Powell, and there'll be a lot of laughs. Did Hugo Chavez really send this message to you from his grave?
Some say the Kraken is real. Others say it's a mythical beast of their imagination. I appreciate the time, Judge, as always. And until next week, appreciate it, sir.
It's a pleasure, my friend. All the best to you.
Yes, sir. Again, folks, that's Judge Andrew Napolitano. Always